Well, friends, first of all, let me welcome you all to Sri Center for Advanced Research. In abbreviation, we call it SACAR. I'm happy to be amongst all of you. Most of you know me and most of you are known to me. And I feel very comfortable because most of the faces I know, except a few. And I'm happy to see that you're all wanting to know about Sri Aurobindo's works, major works, that too. Because to know Sri Aurobindo's works and to understand is quite a task. But to understand Sri Aurobindo's works, personally I feel we have to know the person behind the writings, that is Sri Aurobindo himself. You know, you cannot be reading the Bhagavad Gita and understand it or appreciate it without knowing a bit about Sri Krishna himself. It is by falling in love with Sri Krishna, by getting his blessings, that we can understand a little bit of Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, before knowing the major thought of Sri Aurobindo's works, it would be important to know a little bit about his life, about the person. And that's what we are going to do today. A little bit of the background of Sri Aurobindo the person. It is only from our next class that I will be taking up some of the major books. So basically, most of you know Sri Aurobindo. If I ask you who is Sri Aurobindo to you, the general reply would be that Sri Aurobindo is a philosopher. The world has come to know him by two things: as a philosopher and a revolutionary. But I'm afraid to say that Sri Aurobindo is not at all a philosopher. It's quite a misnomer to say that Sri Aurobindo was a philosopher. In fact, he himself denies it. He says, I'm a poet and a politician, but not a philosopher. So why he says so, we'll come to that later. But Sri Aurobindo has many facets to him. That is one of the reasons why it is difficult to know him, because of the multifaceted genius. See, when I think of Sri Aurobindo, what comes to my mind is the Ashwatha tree. Most of you must be knowing what is the Ashwatha tree. It is referred to in the Gita, even in the Upanishads and even in the Vedas. The Ashwatha tree has its roots in the heavens, in the superconscious. And its branches are coming down towards earth. Sri Aurobindo similarly, his consciousness is always rooted in the superconscious. And he manifests himself in different personalities, in different ways, in different aspects. So we see in him a psychologist, an educationist, a social reformer, a revolutionary, a journalist, a patriot, and many such things. So this is why we have a little difficulty, but it's also important to know that each one of us can approach Sri Aurobindo in the way that best suits us. You may be a businessman, you may be into art, or you may be into dance, or you may be into anything. And the door of Sri Aurobindo is open to you from that angle. So in a way it is easier to understand Sri Aurobindo because he is multifaceted and he allows from different doors. This approach is what I call the involutionary approach. That means looking from above down. One consciousness called Sri Aurobindo, and then the multiple aspects that we see in his manifestation. In fact, by the end of the day, by the end of the session, you would know that people have even called him as a Supreme Incarnate, manifesting in the present age with a specific purpose. As somebody said, he is born in the Sandhya of the new age. What is the Sandhya of the new age? You see, in the last century when Sri Aurobindo was born, there was already a new consciousness that was being searched for, looked for. That is, the world was looking for freedom. Colonies were there, colonization was there, and the whole world was revolting against colonization. Everyone wanted freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of nations, freedom of anything. And this is the time where Sri Aurobindo comes into picture, and he not only speaks about freedom in all his works, but he speaks of a new philosophy, a new thought, wherein he says the new age will be the age where matter and spirit will be united once again. I'm just giving you broad ideas, but we'll come to that later one by one. And this is the person who actually has come on the scene not only to give a new philosophy, a new thought, a new consciousness, but somebody who gathers up within himself this entire spirit of the age. That means, what is the spirit? We said the Zeitgeist. The spirit is that of freedom, a collective liberation, a collective consciousness. And since his birth, we see things are happening in this way. But this is one view, that is what we call the involutionary view. I'd like to tell you something more, a different view now. That is, Sri Aurobindo can be seen in his direct action. Direct action means in the outer world action, on three different levels. This is what makes it easier for us to understand. Although Sri Aurobindo has always said that we should not judge him from his outer activities, surface activities, but his surface activities is not one. There is a different layers, and he moves from one layer to the other, one stage to the other, constantly growing up in consciousness. Although Sri Aurobindo basically is that one supreme consciousness of the divine, he manifests in different stages. That's what is important for all of us to understand. Sri Aurobindo, one who was in Baroda or in Calcutta, is not the same Sri Aurobindo who was in Pondicherry. So there is, Sri Aurobindo himself says, there has been a tremendous growth of his consciousness all along. And this is what I'm going to trace today for your benefit, and see in each stage what has been his literary contribution. Because remember, we are here to focus on Sri Aurobindo's works, on not on spirituality or realization, etc. But what are the works he has given us? So the first stage is that of what I would have named it as the mental, the mental level or the mental stage, which is the stage of the journalist, the revolutionary, the freedom fighter. Now, when we call this stage the mental stage, what did he give us? On this level, he has given us something unique. Everyone knows him as a revolutionary. But you may say, there have been many revolutionaries in our country before the coming of Sri Aurobindo. Why only him? Why are you giving him the importance? Well, it's true that many freedom fighters have come on the scene before 1905, and most of us in our histories we know Rani of Jhansi, Lakshmi Bai, etc., etc. But what is the importance of Sri Aurobindo as a revolutionary? Well, it is said often that Brahmin without Kshatriya is lame, that the Kshatriya without Brahmin is blind. And it is exactly this ideal, the deeper purpose of the freedom of India, the vision of India beyond the freedom that Sri Aurobindo had provided to India. You see, what I am trying to tell you is that there have been many revolutionaries who came to India, who fought for the country, but there had to be somebody who gives us the new vision, the ideal. Is India fighting for its own freedom, just to gain independence from the Britishers? No. Sri Aurobindo gives us a wider ideal that India is fighting not only for its own freedom, but for the sustenance for the world itself. Because he wrote many a time in the Bande Mataram that India's survival as a free country is important for the survival of the world itself. So he gave a broad ideal, and behind this ideal, what is supplied is a very unique thing, what we call a spiritual nationalism. Because there have been many nationalists during his time, before his time, after his time. But what Sri Aurobindo contributed to India is a spiritual nationalism, where he says, nationalism is not a mere political program, nationalism is a religion that has come from God. You see, for the first time we see Sri Aurobindo connecting patriotism, nationalism as a religion. This is something new. Of course, it was there in the air, but so forcefully it was Sri Aurobindo who said that. And in another place he says that Mother India is not a piece of earth, she is a power, a godhead, for all nations have such a Devi supporting their separate existence and keeping it in being. So this concept was very important, because this is how India always fought revolutions. It had never fought revolutions at the level of the army and the Kshatriya. There was always a spiritual ideal for which it fought. So it was wonderful that Sri Aurobindo gave us saying that India is having this a Shakti, is a powerful Godhead. He says it's a mighty Shakti, composed of the Shaktis of all the millions of units that make up the nation, just as Bhavani Mahisha Mardini sprang into being from the Shaktis of all the millions of gods assembled in one mass of force and welded into unity. And I would like to read a little passage from the mother. She has given a wonderful reply to this nationalism. She says, India is not the earth, rivers and mountains of this land. Neither is it a collective name of the inhabitants of this country. India is a living being, as much living as, say, Shiva. India is a goddess, as Shiva is a god. If she likes, she can manifest in human form. So this is the idea that was given to us, contributed by Sri Aurobindo and the mother to the freedom of the country. But this is where we see that he gave a new dream to India, and some of us who have read about his revolutionary days, we see about the power of his beautiful oratory, very powerful, and his writings in Vande Mataram, they electrified the nation and Bengal. There is one question that comes here. Many people have asked the question, why did Sri Aurobindo leave the political field and come away to Pondicherry? Well, in one of his writings, he says very clearly that every great leader must understand when his time is over. One should not overstay his purpose, his role. As it says, the lees of their appointed greatness. So Sri Aurobindo knew that he had secured the future of India, and now he wanted to secure the destiny of the world. So why he has come over to Pondicherry is his role was over. He says, now my next role is to secure the destiny of the world. And this role was given to him by Sri Krishna himself in the prison, in the Alipur prison. So it's not that he decided to leave politics. It was commanded by Lord Krishna himself. So he comes out of the prison after a while. He comes over to Pondicherry. And his literary products during this period were Vande Mataram, the journal Karma Yogin, and a Bengali weekly called Dharma, and some long poems called Urvashi, Love and Death, Songs from Myrtilla, and some plays like The Prince of Edo, Perseus the Deliverer. There have not been much of a literary product there. He concentrated on the journals, spreading the idea of nationalism, spreading the idea of India's role for the future world. But when time came, when he realizes that my next role to come, he quietly leaves the place and comes over to Pondicherry. Now coming to Pondicherry is the next phase. What I have named as the phase of the over-mental. First was the mental, second is the phase of the over-mental. Now this is something that we need to understand in a different way. You see, most of you know who have read his life. He came to Pondicherry in 1910, but in only 1914 that he takes to writing of the Arya, the journal, the Arya. But you may say there are many people who have written journals and books and all that. What is unique about Sri Aurobindo? Well, one thing that we all have to understand, the unique thing is that he wrote all his volumes of Arya, about 8 to 10 books in 6.5 years, all in a perfect silence of the mind. This is something unique in the history of humanity, that he writes voluminous works completely in the silence of the mind. In fact, he himself writes, Sri Aurobindo writes in one of his letters, out of an absolute silence of the mind, he says he has written Vande Mataram and 6 volumes. What is this silence of the mind? Well, if you remember, if you have read his life story, in 1908, Sri Aurobindo, when he was in Gujarat, he had experienced nirvana. Well, immediately you would think of the Buddha. But no, it is not the same nirvana. Nirvana in the Vedic sense is a spaceless, silent and timeless Brahman consciousness. And since 1908, Sri Aurobindo has been continuously living in this Brahman consciousness, and it is from this consciousness that he wrote the Arya, including all the thousands of letters that is sent to his disciples. So this is something that we need to learn, that writing poems or books or articles or journals is not just a mental activity. He has shown us graphically, clearly with an example, that these higher things are written in the silence of the mind. So that's something that is uniquely exemplified by Sri Aurobindo's writings. Well, in 1914, what was the situation like in the world? Well, all of you will remember what I am referring to. Amid the rumblings of the First World War and the swooping down of monstrous forces dark and violent and powerful and blind, endangering the very earth, here was a person sitting unperturbed in a small corner of India, Pondicherry, and was writing about his vision of human unity and a transformed earth. This is what seems to be a little paradoxical. The world is blazing there, and here is a person who is undisturbed. It's not that he is undisturbed because he was not unconcerned. Not at all. In fact, he was undisturbed. I take an idea from the Mother when Sri Aurobindo describes about Maheshwari, that when you have full knowledge, then you are undisturbed. So Sri Aurobindo's being undisturbed is because he has a tremendous knowledge of the present and the future of the world. That's why all the bombings in the world did not distract him or disturb him. That's another thing to note in Sri Aurobindo's life, that all these books, the 10 books, 8 or 9 books he has written, not only are written by silence of the mind, but he was there calm and with an absolute full knowledge. And another thing that we see in him, that as he was envisioning the future of the world, what is the future of the world? Of course, we'll come to that when we see his books, the Life Divine, Savitri, etc. He was not a yogi who was really an ascetic yogi and not concerned with the world. On the contrary, he was very much anchored in his times. That means he kept completely full news of what is happening in the First World War. What is happening every day's news, who is conquering, who is dying, who is attacking, etc. Because he was a person who lived in the present while he was giving the image of the future. So he was foreseeing the far off future where mankind would be completely transformed, and yet he was completely in the present. This is again one thing that people may not understand easily, because they think Sri Aurobindo is a big philosopher of a life divine, speaking of Superman and all that, and his philosophy is not concerned with life. On the contrary, he is most concerned and very much in the present. Well, this is only just an outline that I am giving you. In this area was begun on 15th of August 1914, and this is more or less the same time. In July, the First World War began in the same year, and just a month later, we see Sri Aurobindo launching his journal, the Arya, and the very first chapter of the Life Divine is given there. So we see the life human that is there in tremendous chaos, but Sri Aurobindo is speaking of a divine life that is to come upon earth. And this is the contrast we see. But what is the aim? You see, this was started in a very interesting circumstance. Sri Aurobindo never wanted to write this Arya. He had his experiences while he was in Calcutta or Baroda or even in Pondicherry. But all the spiritual experiences he kept to himself. He didn't want to express. He wrote a couple of poems and a couple of dramas, etc. But it was the mother. When she came, she asked him that all his knowledge should be kept, should be written in a language that is understandable by common humanity. So he accepted the challenge. Challenge in the sense, he said, as a yogi, he must be able to put his pen to all kinds of things. So he accepted the proposal made by the mother and he took it up. And therefore he says, he took up the arya, but what is the purpose behind that? What is the ideal? Well, in one sentence, he says the ideal is to study a systematic study of the highest problems of existence and to have a vast synthesis of all this. So you can imagine what grandiose purpose he had, that is to have a systematic study of the problems of existence. So you see, here is a man who wants to know what are the problems. Problems of rebirth, problems of pain, problems of suffering, problems of, what is happening to human consciousness. So this is what is wonderful about Sri Aurobindo, that it doesn't deal with only Brahman consciousness and Atman and Purusha and Prakriti, no. He says no more existential problems are there of a daily life. And that's what he takes up in the Life Divine. And then not only these problems of existence, but he also sees the grandiose philosophy, grandiose thinking that is there around the world. So he wants to synthesize the East and the West, and not rejecting the Western philosophy saying it's no good, or the Indian philosophy saying it is too ascetic. This is where we see a beautiful synthesis of East and West. So that was his attempt again in the Arya. Well, with this attempt, he wrote the following books. Books in the sense, they used to come out as in serial order like chapters, which have been ultimately published as books. Well, most of you who have read Sri Aurobindo a little bit would know at least the titles. If you have not read the books, the titles are The Life Divine, The Synthesis of Yoga, The Secret of the Veda, Isha Upanishad, The Human Cycle, The Ideal of Human Unity, Essays on the Gita, A Future Poetry, and The Foundations of Indian Culture. Now, to give you a little bit introduction to these works, what was the essence of all these 10 books? If not the essence, the main thrust. But Sri Aurobindo would say that basically his stance is Vedantic. That means he believes the spirit or the Brahman as the very source of this world, as the very material thing or substance of this world. But then what happens? He is Vedantic, but against this Vedanta which has taken us to a kind of a negative path. You all know what I mean. The negative path given to us by Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, that this world is an illusion, that we have to reject this world. On the contrary, Sri Aurobindo stands against that view and he says, no, the world is a reality. It is this matter, life and mind have derived themselves from Brahman, and therefore they are a reality. And this reality is there for us to evolve. That means, in the sense, at present this reality is maybe incomplete, is full of ignorance, full of suffering, but this is not the end of the world. This is not the full manifestation of the world. It says we are evolving from this stage, from level to level, and one day the summit of this evolution is a life divine. You try to understand in very much in brief, we'll take it up in next classes, that this world is a manifestation of the Supreme Brahman, and therefore and thereby it is a reality. But a reality in evolution is not a full-fledged manifestation of Brahman. That is why we find all this ignorance and suffering. But he does not leave the world because it is full of ignorance, saying, I should leave it. On the contrary, he says, we should perfect the world so that this ignorant and incomplete world evolves and one day we reach the summit of a life divine. It may take ages to do that. But here is a person who gives us, like the Vedanta, a very positive angle of life, to look at life. Whereas till now, till the coming of Sri Aurobindo, even now, at least in India, we have this negative thinking of finding salvation, of finding liberation, of finding mukti beyond life. But here is one who turns the tide of Indian philosophy and thinking, and he says, no, this earth is our field of perfection. We have to work here, struggle here, and collectively we have to work and struggle here. Not individually looking for one's own salvation, one's own liberation, one's own wealth, one's own comfort. So this spirit of collectivity which Sri Aurobindo brings in spirituality is what has come to us in materialism today. If you are all working together on the material level, it is there as an ideal in Sri Aurobindo. Now Sri Aurobindo says, because of this philosophy, he starts the Arya with the book, The Life Divine, which contains the main ideals, the metaphysical thought, as he says. But then, philosophy, metaphysical thought by itself remains incomplete and not much of use if it remains only as an ideal, a mental ideal. It has to be practiced, it has to be made realizable, and how to do that? So he says, I have to write that book, the synthesis of yoga. You see, there's beautiful logical sequence. First he gives a metaphysical thought, and then the immediate question would be, which anyone ask would be, how do I reach the new consciousness? How will the supermind come? So he says, I'll give you the path. So first he shows us the ideal, and then in the synthesis of yoga, he gives us the path. That is the second book. And then he would say, he brought in this question of Gita and the Upanishads and the Vedas. He says, because Gita is a wonderful book which shows how to reach spirituality through action. Remember the importance of the Gita. On one side we had, because of Adi Shankara and other yogis, to neglect, to reject action. And Gita is one book which says, no, through action you can reach the divine. So that is the importance of the Gita, and because of which Sri Aurobindo again writes series of articles on the Bhagavad Gita, and he shows us how the divine can be reached through bhakti, through jnana, and through action. So that is how these books came, Isha Upanishad and the Vedas and the Gita. And now this next logic is, the synthesis of yoga and all these books are more on the individual level. And Sri Aurobindo says, I'm not here for individual salvation. So he says, can my philosophy be applied to the society in general? So he takes up another book called The Human Cycle, and he gives the development of society through the spiritual path. So that is how another book comes, The Human Cycle. But even that is incomplete, because society is not the ultimate end of humanity. Beyond society there is a nation. And so now he looks at an international community, how humanity on the international level can be united. So you see how he has gone from the individual to the society, and then to the nation and the international unity, human unity. So this is the gradation he has followed, and because of that he writes different books for each. That's why today most of you have heard of Aurobindo. that takes up that other aspect of ideal of human unity. Then there is the nationalism that is there in society, how to change the society, human cycle. And individuals are there in the ashrams and different places, how do I change my individual life? So whichever appeals to you, you can take it up. Either society, human cycle or ideal of humanity. Well, because of these different aspects, he has tested his philosophy. Otherwise it could be only philosophical, metaphysical thought. But then in order to see his own thought, if it is well tested, it takes up all these books and then sees is perfectly eligible. That his philosophy, his metaphysics is applicable to the individual, to society, to nation and to humanity. And that's where he has fulfilled, he has completed his research, his kind of message to the world. But that's not the end. That is only giving us, as Aurobindo himself said, a very interesting comment. He says this Arya period has been the intellectual side of his work for the world. What I call over-mental is maybe a bit premature to explain to you what is over-mental, but just remember this, I'll explain it later. But this is what he calls the intellectual side of his work for the world, the Arya, the books, the entire knowledge, the message that he has given. But then comes, because the Arya was over by 1920-21, and it's exactly at this time the mother comes back to Pondicherry. So that makes a tremendous change. That means a new element has come in his yoga. That third level is what I call the supramental level. The mental, over-mental and the supramental. Why we call that, we'll see that. But what is the most important aspect of this over-mental, supramental level is Savitri. The Savitri, the great book, some of you may have read it, are still reading it. But there's a lot to say about Savitri. But in the given time, I'll just give you one or two sentences to tell you that Savitri is definitely the most magnificent consciousness, symbol of his consciousness, the Aurobindo and the mother's consciousness. It is not only a great epic poem of 24,000 lines, but those of you who would like to know the autobiography of Mother Aurobindo is embedded in Savitri. Aurobindo and the mother have told us not to write about their life, because the surface life is easy to understand. But what is the true inner life and their growth of consciousness is almost given verbatim in Savitri. So if you want to know about their life, what is their spiritual inner journey, it is Savitri that gives. That's why Savitri, although it is a very simple story of love conquering death, there's much more to that. And it's very inspiring, it's mantric, and it has got almost a full sketch of the world, how it was made, what is its future, what will be the supramental world. It's what I would say, the totality of Aurobindo's vision is there in Savitri. And it is really inspiring because it has that mantric effect. So I would say Savitri is a combination of the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Gita. It has all the philosophy, all the thought, all the language, all the mantric effect, and still something beyond. That's the new supramental world. So it's extremely, not only, it is captivating, but in one word, as the mother herself said, it is transformative. So to read Savitri is to transform, at least to try and transform our own life, our own consciousness. You may not understand it, You may say that I don't understand poetry, I'm a man of business person, I'm a man of this and that, but it doesn't matter. Just as we read the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit or in our translations, we don't understand the Bhagavad Gita. But since ages, Indians have been reciting the Bhagavad Gita. It has sunk into the consciousness of the nation, and that's what has upheld our spirituality. Similarly, I would say, Savitri will become that future mantra. If people just can recite, can read a page or two per day, that will bring you peace. All that you think of, how to take away tensions and problems and suffering. There are all kinds of human problems. But the mother would say, read Savitri. So it's a kind of a panacea, a spiritual panacea. And therefore, Savitri, although many of its ideas are given in Sriaurobindo's sonnets, but I would say Savitri will ring through the ages of Earth's evolutionary history. People may not understand philosophy, may not practice the yoga, synthesis of yoga, but if you read Savitri, that is the culmination. So that is the only work where many people think that will be ringing in the evolutionary history of humanity. That has a long future, and I think when we come to the book Savitri, we'll talk more about its other aspects. Well, I'll end by giving you a little quote from a Vice Chancellor, Dr. C.R. Reddy, a Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, who gave us many years back, one very inspiring quote, an idea of Sri Aurobindo. He says, Sri Aurobindo is the sole sufficing genius of the age. He is among the saviors of humanity, who belong to all ages and all nations, the Sanatans, who leaven our existence with their eternal presence. In the world of death, He, immortal, gives us the assurance of immortality. The world has need of Thee, Sri Aurobindo, and that is why Thou art with us still. This is, many people have written many things, but I thought this is a wonderful, appreciation, accolades from Sri Aurobindo. The last word is almost like Rabindranath Tagore, who had said the same thing. The world has need of Thee, Sri Aurobindo, and that is why Thou art with us still. This is, in fact, a very brief outline of Sri Aurobindo the person. I've made it very simple in order so that you can understand the different stages. And now, having known this person a little bit, we will now take up from our next class, that is on Sunday again, the different books. That is, the different books that he has written in the Arya. I'll be giving only one talk per one book, because we have got 8 more talks or 7 more talks. I'll be covering 7 books. After these 7 talks, or covering the 7 books, I will lead you to each book, giving 4 or 6 talks on each book. That means I'm taking you from the minimum, I'm getting a little deeper, and then into greater depths by about 4 to 6 talks on each book. And the third stage would be, those of you who would like to study further, you can join regular courses. So that is my strategy: an introduction, a deeper study, and regular courses. So it may take us a long time. All of you may not survive this long time. But those of you who are interested, well, I'm sure you will hang on with me, because that has been my experience. I have been reading and studying Sri Aurobindo since 1965. So imagine how many years it is now. Some of you may not be of that age even. But that's what it is. Once you touch Sri Aurobindo, you get charmed, maddened by the rest of your life. So this is where I'm saying, that the works will come later. But first, approach Sri Aurobindo. It's exactly what I told. If you do not know what Sri Krishna is, you cannot understand or appreciate the Bhagavad Gita. And in fact, the mother had once told somebody, if you want to understand Sri Aurobindo, or specifically the life divine, she said, put it on Sri Aurobindo's Samadhi and ask for his grace. That is the greatness of all the spiritual works. That you cannot understand it by yourself, however great or brilliant you may be. You need the Ashirwad, the grace of the Divine Master. And therefore, this last line by Sri Reddy, I really admire that. The world has need of thee, Sri Aurobindo, and that is why thou art with us still. Thank you so much.